MacVoices at CES 2024. MacVoices is in Las Vegas for NAB. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, every year we have to come back and talk to Libsyn because Libsyn hosts my podcasts. And if you're doing a podcast or going to do a podcast, this is the guy you need to talk to. Rob, it's good to see you.
Chuck, as always, great to see you, sir.
How many years have we been doing this?
Oh, it's over 10, well over 10.
Yeah, I've been a Libsyn customer a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're coming to NAB, I think now almost 15 years. So.
And I love the fact that you're here because, you help validate the fact that if podcasts need validation, the fact that you're here helps do it.
When I first started coming here, it was, what's a podcast? Now I say to people, what podcast are you listening to, right? And they know. I don't have to answer the question, what is a podcast anymore, right? They all know it. Most of them are doing it. They all listen to podcasts for sure. Everyone that's here, which is nice.
So it's been an interesting evolution. And I just saw something the other day that there's now, and I'm not going to try to do a statistic, but there's a healthy percentage of, I guess, the American public that listens to at least one podcast.
Yeah, we're well over 50% now. And we're at 80% that know what a podcast is, and over 50% that have listened to a podcast. So more people have listened to a podcast now in the U.S. than have not, which is nice.
So how do we help them discover more podcasts or better podcasts or different podcasts?
It's word of mouth. I mean, word of mouth marketing is still the number one way podcasts grow. It's just like movies. You can have a really great movie and do no budgeting on it and it take off. Sixth Sense, perfect example, right? Sixth Sense took off with no budget on marketing because people just told everybody, go see it. And word of mouth also works against you, right? In movies, Johnny Depp, Lone Ranger, everybody said, don't go see it. And podcasting's the same way. People tell their friends, hey, go listen to this podcast. I listened to this podcast. It was good. And that's just ultimately the biggest way that podcasts grow. Interesting.
I kind of forgot about Johnny Depp and the Lone Ranger.
I think he did too.
Yeah, it was, well, never mind. So what's new with Libsyn? I mean, every year we talk about the basics, the podcast hosting and all, but every year you all seem to add a little something, another service, another aspect to it.
This year, Libsyn Ads, we've just rebranded. We acquired AdvertiseCast and we rebranded it Libsyn Ads, and we're integrating it more into the Libsyn UI. So we're making it easier for people that are on Libsyn or people that are working with AdvertiseCast to move over to Libsyn to host their podcast. You still don't have to host with Libsyn for us to bring you advertising, but we have now programmatic ads, which you do have to host with us. And we're getting more and more podcasters taking up us on the programmatic side, which is really nice. For podcasters, they'll just think, I just want one pre-roll and two post-rolls, and doing no additional work, they're making thousands of dollars a month.
So you bring up an interesting thing that I want to talk about, and that is pre-roll versus post-roll versus mid-roll.
Mm-hmm.
I have some pretty strong feelings about at least one of those categories, but I'm not going to reveal them. I'm going to find out what you think about, what is most effective, both from the conversion standpoint as well as the appealing to listener standpoint.
So what I would say is, on your most recent episode, don't have a pre-roll. And the reason not to have a pre-roll on your most recent episode is when someone searches for you in Apple Podcasts and they find your podcast, maybe that's searching for you, maybe searching for a podcast on your topic, and they find your podcast. Apple, when they go and hit tap on that show, the biggest button on the screen is listen to the latest episode. So people discovering you for the first time, do you really want it to be an ad for the Kentucky Lottery or Geico or Allstate? You probably don't. So having in your most recent episode no pre-roll is my recommendation to folks, but you can turn that off. So when you host with Libsyn and you do the programmatic, you can say, I don't want this episode to have pre-roll. And then when you go and publish your next episode, you just go and turn it on for the episode that's now the second oldest, and then the most recent one, you turn it off. And you just keep doing that. And matter of fact, you can actually even have our system set up automatically to say the most recent episode just doesn't get a pre-roll. And it doesn't get ads. And we just block it on that, and then you'll get the programmatic on all the other ones. Mid-roll ads are the most effective as far as not being skipped. So people already have the phone in their pocket. They're just going to listen to the ad if it's not too intrusive, if it's not too long. And in post-roll ads, people don't think post-rolls are effective. Post-rolls are actually really effective if they're advertising other podcasts. So you get to the end of a podcast, and now here's an ad for another podcast, hopefully on the same genre. And that's the best place to have an ad for another podcast.
That's interesting. And a little surprise. It makes a certain amount of sense, but I'm still surprised.
Yeah, and we see that. So some services don't even offer post-roll. We get a lot of revenue from the post-roll. Now, some of that is for other products and services, but people do listen all the way through. Again, they have their phone in their pocket, and it just plays until it gets to the end, and then the next episode in their queue comes up. So, not enable post-roll ads. That's what I tell people. It's easy money, and it's not annoying to the listeners. It's at the end of the episode. If people don't like ads, they're at the end. They can just at that point, pick the phone up and go find the next episode to listen to.
Interesting. And with Libsyn, I can turn on and off on an individual episode basis?
Yes, absolutely. And you can add mid-rolls on a per episode basis at the exact time code that you want that makes sense for you. Right? There's some AI out there that will find spots for you. The problem with AI finding spots, all it really does is look for biggest pregnant pauses in certain areas. And that big pregnant pause can be, I heard from my mom last night that my grandma passed away. And then all of a sudden comes a Geico ad or an Allstate, right? Yeah. And you're like, well, that's the AI. Don't let AI pick your ad slots. You as a podcaster really should be picking your ad slots because you know where in your episode you can have a break and where you shouldn't have a break. And if you let AI pick your ad spots, or just worse yet, some of these services out there will just put it at the 10-minute mark and the 15-minute mark or the 20-minute mark. That's right in the middle of a word. It's just like watching YouTube, how annoying that is on YouTube. It's even more annoying in podcasting.
Yeah, because we're back to the old discussion of people will watch questionable video, but they won't listen to questionable audio.
No. Yeah. So use gray matter when picking your ad slots. Libsyn lets you do that, lets you go through each episode, pick exactly where those ads should be. And the people that are doing it the best, when they're editing their episodes, they're just writing down the time code. This is where it should go. This is where it should go. And then you just go in and you upload the episode, you type in the time codes. This is where I want my mid-roll 1 and mid-roll 2, mid-roll 3 to go. And you have that flexibility. And we allow one pre-roll slot. Well, pre-roll is automatic, post-roll is automatic. You can turn them on or off. And then 8 mid-roll slots with up to 3 ads per slot. So that means 30 ads in an episode you could potentially have. Now, people go, wow, that's a lot of ads. But we have shows that are 6 hours long.
Right.
So if you have a 6 hour long episode, 30 ads in a 6 hour long episode isn't a lot of ads. It's a lot less than radio.
So I was eavesdropping a little bit on a conversation you were having with the gentleman in the booth before we started this. So I'm going to paraphrase one of his questions. What would you tell someone who's ready to get into podcasting? What do they need other than come to Libsyn?
Really, you got to there's all this bad advice out there. Have 3 or 5 or 10 episodes in the can before you start. 1 episode, launch it. Just 1 and launch. It could be a trailer episode. It doesn't have to be a full episode. You got to get your artwork, description. And the biggest thing I think where people make the mistake is the title. They try to get really cutesy with the title. Apple is where, even after iOS 17 and after all the adjustments with iOS 17, Apple's still over 50% of podcast downloads. Spotify's 20. So Apple is still much larger. And if you go into Apple Podcasts and you start searching for something, it's called predictive results. And if you look at the predictive results, you'll notice something. It's all about the first word in the title of your podcast. So if you want to start a podcast, the best thing you can do is figure out the one keyword, or actually better yet, think of 3 keywords that you would search for, different keywords that you would search for to find a podcast on your topic. Then go to Google Trends and see which one of those 3 people actually are searching for. And whichever one Google Trends is telling you is the one that more people search for, make that the first word in the title of your podcast. And then build your title out from there. Even if it sounds like Yoda wrote the title, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the early days of podcasting listening to, different pieces of advice. And you're right, people try to get too cute. And I'm thinking of one particular incident I heard where someone came up and said, "This is my podcast." And the gentleman giving advice was like, "What is that?" I have no idea what that means, what that's about.
If you don't know if someone that doesn't know you doesn't know what your podcast is about from the title, your title isn't very good. Your title's bad. It's actually failing you.
If you can, talk a little bit about the price structure with Libsyn, how you work, because you work differently than some other services. I think the way you do it makes a lot more sense, but that's me. I'm a little biased.
So we have Libsyn.com. So I want to talk about Libsyn.com. That's what's more of the independent DIY type folks. It starts at $5 a month and it goes up from there. $20 plan is what most people use. $20 plan will get you 540 megabytes of new uploads in a calendar month. We base it on how much you upload. And notice we say megabytes, not really minutes, because we support both audio and video. So we do it on megabytes. And you get to pick how you want your audio and your video files to be encoded. We don't re-encode your files. So you can do, 96 kilobit on MP3, and you'll be at 0.75 meg per minute. Someone else may do it at 128. That's in 1 meg per minute. Don't do 320 kilobits per second for audio. There's no advantage to it. It's just overkill. Anything above 128, by the way, for audio is just overkill. 128 kilobits, mono, 44.1 kilohertz sample rate, MP3. That's the ideal specs. And that works out to about a meg a minute. But we do the pricing there. And then what we don't charge you on Libsyn.com is download excess downloads. If you get 100 downloads or 100,000 or 1 million downloads in a month, you pay the same $20 that you signed up for.
And my files stay online as long as I maintain the service.
As long as you're right. So it's that 540 is new uploads in that calendar month. Right. So I have files I uploaded in 2005 that are still in my account, still live.
And another nice thing is you don't require me to maintain my current level. If I have a slow month or I'm going on vacation and I don't need the 540, I can drop it down. And that, you really it feels like you have built a service for the podcaster to make it as flexible as you can.
Thank you. Yeah, and that was the goal. Right? We have people that do that. They do seasons, right? And if your season, let's say you were doing Game of Thrones, it could be a long time between seasons, as you learned, right? And then there was between the two different series, Game of Thrones. So there was multiple years. So those people that were needing a lot of content, they bumped up to $20 or $40 a month for the content they needed to upload. And then in the off seasons, they dropped it down to $5. And then when they turned it back up to the 20, hey, they got the stats that they were missing. We try to make it flexible for the podcaster. And we understand some podcasters go on hiatus. They may not ever want to release a new episode, but they want to keep them live, and we allow that as well.
The website where folks can go to learn about Libsyn Ads, Libsyn hosting, Libsyn everything.
Libsyn, LIBSYN.com.
Great. Rob, good to see you as always.
Chuck,
thanks so
likewise.
much. Next year?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. We'll be back at NAB soon. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.